Okay, so I'll make a start. Yeah, welcome along. Week 4 of the course. So there is one more week to go. I think some people are losing track of weeks, which is what tends to happen at this time of year. Um, so what we're going to be doing this evening is focusing on the neutral person stage. I'll also be saying a little bit about different ways of engaging with the practice. So we'll look at the neutral person stage in the first half, and then we'll do some meditation. We'll have the breakout rooms, and then a break as we have been doing, and then like I say, in the second half we'll explore different ways of engaging with the Metta Bhavana, different creative ways of engaging with images in particular, and we'll do a full period of meditation before we set up our practice for this coming week, and then we finish. So so like I say, we're going to focus on the neutral person stage. And I just want to pick up on something that we've been talking about over the last weeks, which is this idea that there's these two principal aspects of our experience, two strands of our experience that are running at the same time. So there's what's there. So there's what we find, what we notice when we sit down to meditate. Which is going on all the time. It's just that when we meditate, we've got more of an opportunity to notice it, to be in tune with it, to understand it. And then there's what we do. So what we do in response to what we notice. And as I was saying last week, there's a particular part of the what is there aspect, which is what we call feeling tone or Vedana. And it's really, really key because Vedana or feeling tone is like the building blocks of all the other things that we do. Yeah? So most of what we do are responses or reactions even to the different kinds of feeling tone that we experience in our lives. And what we're trying to do with meditation is move from responses or reactions to feeling tone that aren't helpful to responses to feeling tone that are helpful. That's the major transition that we're trying to effect through the practice of the Metta Bhavana, and actually all Buddhist practice really. So there's 3 different kinds of feeling tone. So there's pleasant feeling tone. So that's when we see something or hear something, feel something with our body, taste something, think something, and we find it pleasant. It's something that was agreeable to us, something that we'd like to continue. So it's seeing somebody beautiful, it's hearing maybe beautiful music. And as we've been saying, most of our strongest responses, our strongest experiences even of Vedana, arise in response to other people. They arise when we encounter another person. So that can be pleasant, it can also be painful. So as the philosopher said, hell is other people. Heaven is other people too, but yeah, hell is other people. So we can find other people exceedingly painful. And then there's this other category of neutral. And what neutral means, it's not really a separate category. It's when we encounter something that doesn't register as either pleasant or painful. We know that it's there. We're present to it, but we don't experience it as neutral. So a lot of the feeling tone we experience is of this kind. So I often find, for example, if I'm being aware of my body, I'll notice that there's, like right now, for example, I'm sitting and there's a slight discomfort in my, my left leg, because it's slightly being squashing into my right leg because of the way I'm sitting. It's not terribly uncomfortable, it's slightly uncomfortable, a little bit of a twinge in my knee. And there's a kind of a nice warm feeling because I've got a blanket around me. But if I think about my left arm, or I notice or pay attention to my left arm, there's not much, I know it's there, but there's not really any pleasant or painful feeling tone. It's just sort of neutral. So that's what neutral means. It's something that's a feeling tone that doesn't register as either pleasant or painful. So as I mentioned last week, I think I mentioned this, the different stages of the Metta Bhavana, what we do is we actually bring to mind, or we evoke those particular Vedanas or those feeling tones, and we begin to work with them. So in the first in the first stage, where it's metta for ourselves. So we just try and meet whatever we are at that particular point in time with kindness. And then the pleasant Vedana tends to arise when we bring to mind our friend. So in a way, it's quite innocent, really, to think happy thoughts, as Peter Pan says. But what we're trying to do in this second stage is, as it were, purify our responses to our friend of attachment. In other words, we want, often what happens is we want our friend to be happy, because when they're happy, they do nice things for us, and they're much better company than if they're unhappy. So in other words, we want them to be happy for our sake, not for their sake. So that's what we're trying to do. I mean, I don't think this is a huge problem for people, but I think it's just worth noticing that, or at least acknowledging that in the good friend stage, we're trying to wish our friend well for their sake, not wish them well so that they're well for us. So that's how we might work with pleasant feeling tone in the second stage, the good friend stage. The painful feeling tone is what we're working with in the difficult person stage. So we explored this a bit last week, and how what we're endeavouring to do is to just notice the fact, acknowledge the fact that when we bring that person to mind, there's an element of pain there. There's an element of discomfort, maybe of hurt, maybe of grievance, of injury. So we're holding that, so to speak. We're being with that feeling tone, together with an imaginative identification with the other person, so that we're not just, in a way, labeling them as the person who makes us feel pain, that there's more to them than that. So when we use this word difficult person, in a way, it's not that they're literally difficult. To put it a bit more accurately, it's that we find that it's the person we find difficult. So I think it's important not to get too hard and fast about labeling them as being this or that. So tonight, I just want to say a few things about the neutral person. So in a way, this is one of the most difficult parts of the practice, because when we bring to mind the neutral person, in a way, nothing happens. Neutral feeling tone happens. And there's not much to engage with. So for most people, this is the stage when we're most likely to get distracted. And what's happening there is the most common and most typical response to neutral feeling tone, which is that we look for pleasure instead. So another word for neutral feeling tone is boredom. So we're just bored. So we bring to mind somebody and we're just bored. We don't want to be with them, and we want to experience something different, which is pleasant. So that's the most usual thing that we do. So what you'll notice is that when you're doing the Metta Bhavana, you'll bring to mind a neutral person, and then a few moments later, you'll notice that you're thinking about something that you'd rather be doing, or it could be anything. You've drifted off because you're not interested. So it doesn't happen so much in the difficult person stage. What typically happens in the difficult person stage is you get distracted, but you get distracted in a way by the difficulty itself. You start having an argument with the person in your mind. Whereas, like I say, in the neutral person stage, you just kind of drift off. So as I said, in the painful stage, or the difficult person stage, we're trying to just acknowledge the pain of that relationship, or that what's happened between you and that person, and just sort of being with that, bearing witness to that almost. And a similar thing is what we try and do with the neutral person stage. We just try and stay with that sense of like nothing's going on. It's boring. So what we really need to, in other words, what we need to do if we're bored is wait. Just wait. Just wait for some kind of depth of engagement to happen. I've got a friend, he's really into looking at paintings. He's one of these people who goes into art galleries and just looks at a painting for a long time. And that, in a way, he's kind of practicing just that. He just stands in front of the painting and just waits with that kind of boredom of looking at it until some kind of interest is awoken in what he's looking at. And then you're kind of drawn into it. Then he's drawn into it. Then we're drawn into it. So I think that's partly what we're trying to do with the neutral person stage, is just acknowledge the fact that there's not a lot of interest there, and just see if we can stay with that. See if we can keep that person in mind and wait for some kind of deeper engagement to emerge. It's quite counter. It's quite counter to what our usual attitude towards things. This approach. Usually, particularly in modern life, boredom is almost seen as the ultimate evil. That you should never be bored. That being bored is almost like like a sin. You should pick up your smartphone or put a bit on a bit of Netflix or do something, but you should never be bored. But actually, boredom is often a necessary precursor to depth, to real attentiveness. Otherwise, we're just going from stimulation to stimulation and never developing any real depth of understanding or awareness. So in a way, what happens when we do that stage is we just stay with that person and we just wait. So let me see. Do I need to say anything else about that? Yeah, I think that's basically the gist. The gist of what I wanted to say about the neutral person stage. Maybe I'll say one more thing, which is, in a way, the neutral person stage is one of the most profound parts of the practice, because in a way we don't get anything back from it. Like, if we bring to mind our friend, like if we do metta for ourselves, we'll be on better terms with ourselves. We'll definitely kind of benefit. If we do metta for our friend, it'll probably improve our friendship with that person. If we do metta for a difficult person, we'll remove that barb of hatred from our heart. So we'll feel happier. But with the neutral person stage, in a way, we don't benefit from it. Not immediately, anyway. So it's more genuinely other regarding, more deeply profound, because you're just doing it for the sake of doing it. It's kind of its own reward, as it were. I always think of that poem by Seamus Heaney, that St. Kevin and the Blackbird, and it's actually a kind of a metaphor or a teaching from Christianity, but to labour and not to seek reward. If you know the poem, St. Kevin's in his cell and the blackbird lays in his hand. He's got his hand out the window in prayer, and as he's got his hand out, a blackbird lands in his hand and lays an egg. And Kevin decides he's going to hold his hand out with the blackbird in it until the eggs have hatched and the birds have fledged and flown. And he's just doing that because it's a good thing to do. He's not doing it because he's looking for some kind of reward. So I think, in a way, the neutral person stage has got that kind of profundity, that kind of depth. It's just, you're just developing a kind of solidarity with other life because you want to develop solidarity with other life. So let's have a go. If you want to set yourself up for meditation, and we'll have a go at doing, first of all, the metta for self, metta for a friend, and then we'll go into the stage of metta for a neutral person, and then we'll just sit for a bit. So if you'd like to set yourself up, and when you're ready, we'll make a start.
Sorry, Yanadara, you're muted.
So try that again. So just remembering that awareness, that metta, are natural. So we're not trying to force ourselves into anything unnatural. We're just trying to create the conditions for awareness, for metta to emerge. Emerge from what's happening right now in our mind and our heart. So what is happening right now in our mind and in our heart? So often a clue to that will be the way that our body is. So tuning into our overall state of mind, state of being through the sensations, the feelings in our body. And our body is a mass of feeling tone, pleasant experiences, painful experiences, and neutral experiences. So if there's pleasure in our body, we can just enjoy it. We can just relax into it. If there's pain, just notice if we're clenching or gripping around it. Pain in the shoulders or in the head, in the belly or the chest. And as we become more aware of our body, that can deepen into a deeper sense of the mind, emotion, thought, the atmosphere of our mind. Whether it's constricted or expansive, cool or warm, distressed or at peace. And just remembering wherever you are is your starting point. You don't have to be in a special place or a special state to meditate. So what we're doing to begin with is just finding out where we are, developing a curious, sort of purposeful awareness. and particularly paying attention to the area around the heart. Noticing that we prefer pleasure and well-being to pain and illness, which is just natural and in a way good. So we can say to ourselves, may I be well. We can say to ourselves, may I be happy. Don't badger away with the phrase. Don't nag with the phrase. Just drop it in, let it resonate, and give your attention to any warmth, expansion, kindness that emerges without expecting it to. So now bringing to mind a good friend, and just spending a bit of time doing that, evoking their particular character. Like everybody is utterly unique. So what's the particular qualities that make that person that person? And the strange fact is that they also experience pleasure and pain, neutral feeling tone as well, and the whole range of emotions and thoughts and hopes and fears and dreams that are the experience of a human being. And just noticing what it's like to have them there. Like, how does it feel? What's the tone of it? Is it pleasant? Is it painful? Is it neither pleasant nor painful? How does it feel to bring them to mind? And then you can wish that person well also. So remembering what we've learned about not forcing, we can say, may you be well. we can say, may you be happy. So now letting that person move into the background and just being with yourself as you are. Don't worry if that didn't go as well as you hoped it might. It probably went better than you thought. If you try to engage in any way, it will have an effect, a positive effect. And then bringing to mind a neutral person, making sure that you choose one particular person and resolving to remain with them for the next few minutes. So they too exist from their side. They experience pleasure and pain. Happiness and sadness, security and fear, and so on. And just noticing what it's like to be with them and acknowledging that it might not feel like much at all. And that's okay. That's where we start from. So have you gotten distracted? Or are you still there with that person? And when we say, may you be happy, we're including them in our attitude of metta without trying to force some kind of feeling into existence. We're trying to develop the intention, the wish for their well-being, simply by saying, may you be well. And may you be happy. And then just sitting, so letting go of any conjurings or any particular directed effort, and just sit. So I've been making this distinction on this course between what is there and what we do. Yeah, so what is there and what we do, and trying to bring a bit more of a subtle understanding about the doing part. So for a lot of us, what we do when we do the Metta Bhavana is we come in really heavy, and we don't stop to notice what's going on. And it's like we kind of overlay what we think ought to be happening on top of what's actually happening. So it's as if what we've been trying to do over the last 3.5 weeks is just to develop a much keener awareness of what's going on when we bring people to mind, for example, and then allowing what we do to emerge out of that understanding, allowing what we do to emerge out of a deeper appreciation of the actual facts of the case. Yeah, so what our actual experience is of ourself, what our actual experience is of the other person, what we're actually thinking, what we're actually feeling. So I wanted to talk now a little bit about what we do. Yeah, so talk a little bit about the doing part of the practice, because it is an active practice. It's not a completely passive practice. We are developing. Developing is an active thing. Metta Bhavana means development. We're developing the wish, the intention, the desire for the well-being of ourselves and others. So it is active, but like I say, that activity needs to be intelligent in a way and based on awareness and subtle. So one way of working, probably most of us are familiar with the phrases, yeah? So using words to evoke that intention. So may is like an intentional word. I've just been writing a few cards for the end of the year, and I'm saying things like, may 2021 bring health and blessings. It's like an intention. You're telling the person what you wish for them. So that's something that we do all the time. May you be well. May you have a great year next year. May you have a great Christmas break or whatever. So may you be well. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering, and may you make progress. It's like a way of saying in words that thought or that intention or that, even that emotion sort of in your heart, in your mind. So another way of doing that, which some of you might find helpful, might find opens things out a bit, is by doing that with images. Yeah, so we can, as well as saying the words, or instead of saying the words, we can think of the person being well and happy and free and making progress in their life, growing and developing. So yeah, we can literally do that. We can, when we bring to mind the person, and we're imagining them, we can actually see them as being well and happy and free and growing and developing. As if what we're wishing for them has come to pass, and that can have a really powerful effect. I've practiced myself in that way quite a bit over the years. So yeah, so in other words, you're creating a kind of an equivalent in an image of what you're wishing in terms of words and ideas. So another approach, using images, is to use the image of light. So this is kind of a universal symbol, really, light. I mean, it's particularly the case at this time of year where it's so dark, and what do people do? We bring light into our houses. So I just walked in, and every night I walk into town, there's more and more fairy lights in the houses on the way into town. And that's all about, bringing light into the darkness. And of course, that there's the whole symbolism of the solstice, where light begins to grow, having, the year's kind of contracted, and then after the solstice, the light begins to grow again, and the new year begins. So it's a very, very powerful time, sort of mythologically. And Buddhism, like other spiritual traditions, uses imagery of light as a symbol of wisdom, but also as a symbol of love. So one way you can do that, one way you can use that kind of symbolism is just by imagining light, and imagining light as kind of, as it were, conveying or expressing metta. So one way of doing that is, when you do the first stage, you can just imagine light kind of gathering in your heart. Maybe light, even if there's tension, if there's pain, if there's even hatred or aversion, imagine that light kind of dissolving it, sort of saturating or soaking through your whole being. It's traditional as well to imagine that light is coming from somewhere else. It might be coming from the Buddha, So sometimes you might imagine the Buddha above your head or in your heart even. And so it's as if the Buddha, you could say, just riffing off what we talked about last week, that the Buddha that you imagine represents that potential that you have, represents that the possibility that you can grow into an enlightened, awakened being yourself. And you're sort of starting from that point and developing metta from there, and then that light expressed from your heart to the hearts of others. So, that could be, light of any color, really. Traditionally, metta is often associated with the color red, but it could, be any color, literally any color, whatever metta looks like to you. There's one figure called Green Tara who appears as a kind of goddess, beautiful, like really beautiful goddess, and she's made of green light. It's quite strange in a way, and she's an embodiment or a symbol or an archetype of the quintessence of compassion. And you imagine her, and by imagining her, you sort of evoke that quality of compassion, not just compassion, but fearless compassion. And it's green, which is quite strange, but mysterious, but green. So the point I'm making is that it can be any color, whatever you feel love looks like. And you can imagine that's radiating from your heart to the neutral person, to the difficult person, to your friend, to all beings at the end. We haven't really looked at the last stage all that much on this course, but we'll look at it next week. So that's one way you can imagine a person being well and happy and free. You can use light, the imagery of light. You can use that as an expression or as something that conveys metta. You could also think of metta as like a flower. The imagery of a flower opening in the heart, and a flower opening other people's hearts. So I think we looked at that last week, if I remember rightly. That flower or a bud flower or bud being like a symbol of potential. So interestingly, I mentioned this figure Tara, the green goddess, and she has in each hand a lotus spray, like a spray of lotuses, and there's the lotus flowers are in different stages of unfoldment. So there's like a bud, there's a half open lotus, and there's a fully open lotus. And so she again, she embodies that sort of sense of potential and growth, and the development and the realization of potential through growth, through compassionate activity, and the expression of metta, really. So I just wanted to mention that you bring all that into the practice. Really, you're only limited by your imagination with Metta Bhavana. You can really go to town with it, actually. Particularly, you've got to check that what you're doing is not just fancy, that it's genuine. It's the way that you're imaging is genuinely the expression of metta. It's real. It's not just a sort of like fancy, like a flight of fancy. But you'll know that if you're really, you can check in with yourself. Am I just sort of creating a pretty picture here, or is this expressing something that's kind of deep, that's real and that's true? Those are just three ways that I'm mentioning. There's myriads of others, I'm sure. What we're going to do in a moment is do the method where we just imagine light. So it'll be red light tonight, but like I say, it could be any color you like. So it looks like, from what we've seen in the chat, that it's important that we include Ema's dog. Okay, so make sure that you include Ema's dog in the last stage. So I'll just stop talking for a couple of minutes and just allow you time to settle into your meditation posture, and then we'll make a start. So it sounds like Ema's dog, whose name appears to be Buddy, is feeling our love, which is great. Dogs are very sensitive, actually, to human emotion, it seems. So I'll stop talking for a moment, and then we'll make a start. So in the morning, before the sun rises, light just begins to kind of emerge just incrementally, so that the shapes of things become clear without there being any particular source of light. So awareness is a little bit like that. So just allowing, by paying attention, awareness to grow and gather in the body. And this morning, that light is red, like the glow of rubies. We see it incrementally, gradually filling our body, soaking into our body and our mind. It's like the light of wisdom, the light of love, which is expressive of our deepest nature. When all the egotism, the selfishness, the anxiety, the aversion falls away, there's light, red, ruby light, filling our body and our mind. The light particularly constellates around the heart. We might feel a corresponding warmth with that ruby red glow. That light is an image, an expression of the desire for our own well-being, happiness, freedom, and growth. And then we bring to mind a good friend. Actually having a sense of them being with us, in front of us, or maybe beside us. So their body filling a portion of space. So it's as if they're alive there with us. An actual imagined physical presence. and notice what it's like to have them there. What feelings arise, what thoughts arise. And that ruby red light that is gathered in our heart begins to move towards their body and their heart, filling their whole being with love, with metta. So if we're frustrated or bored, just sitting with that frustration and boredom, with our friend and with red light. Red light flowing from our heart to their heart, from our body to their body. Checking that you're not forcing or straining as your body and your mind relaxed. And then bringing to mind a neutral person. Again, seeing if you can have a sense of their physical presence, their body occupying space in the way that you feel your body occupies space. And how does it feel to have that person present? Remembering that it might not feel like much at all, and that's okay. We just need to stay with that neutral feeling tone and let that red ruby love flow out towards them also. So what's happening now? Are they still there? Are you still there? And then returning to your own heart, feeling that ruby red love within your own heart. Feeling what it feels like to have it there, that ruby light in the heart. And then bringing to mind someone you find difficult. And again, noticing what it's like to do that, to bring that difficult person to mind. How does it actually feel? And just allowing yourself to feel how it feels, to be with how it is. And at the same time as you do that, letting that red light flow out towards them also. And then including in that light yourself, your friend, the neutral person, and the difficult person, and including them all equally. They're all recipients, so to speak, of the offering of red light. And then you let that light flow outwards in all directions, including more and more people, more and more living beings. So you might like to start with your family and friends. people that you associate with, maybe people you study with or work with or see regularly. The red light expands, radiates outwards to different kinds of people in different places. Again, just letting your imagination flow in the way that is natural for you in your mind and your heart. Including other forms of life. Again, just being imaginative, not just the beings that we see, but all kinds of different living beings of different kinds living on the earth in different parts, living in the sky, living in the oceans and the rivers, living in all parts. All beings desirous of their well-being and happiness, suffused with this ruby red light. And then the light no longer comes from us. It's something that we're in, that all beings are in. So there's just radiating red light. And then just sitting, so letting go of directing your attention, of thinking about this or that thing or person or being, and just relax into whatever's going on. So you're just completely open. So bringing the practice to an end in your own way, in your own time. So in terms of home practice this week, so there's two things basically. The first thing is to pay particular attention to how you are working in the neutral person stage and learning to stay with neutral feeling tone without losing an awareness and imaginative identification with the neutral person. So sometimes that just means waiting until some kind of interest, some spark of metta really begins to grow for the neutral person. And the second thing is just to try working with images. So I mentioned three different ways you could do that. So you can imagine the person being well, happy and free. You can imagine metta as light in the way that we just explored. You could imagine a flower unfolding in the heart. So those are just three possible ideas. There's myriad other ways that you could do that. And just to say as well that this might not work for you at all, and that's absolutely fine. So not everybody thinks in images. Not everyone readily takes to that kind of approach. So if it doesn't work for you, don't worry about it. In fact, if any of the approaches or any of the different ways that we've approached the practice don't work for you, just don't worry about it. Just let them go. It doesn't matter that much. As long as you've got something that you're working away on, some kind of opening, some kind of expanding approach, that's the main thing. You can just get on with that. So I'm throwing a lot of things out at you and hoping that some of them will kind of catch you. And it doesn't really matter what it is. It might be nothing that I've been talking about at all. It might be just something that's emerging in your own practice, just through your continued engagement with it. So again, that's fine. It doesn't have to be something particular. So that's what I'd encourage you to engage with this week. What we're going to do next week is we're going to look a little bit more at images, particularly images of the awakened mind, and how we can engage with them in metta. And we'll also look at the last stage. So we haven't given any particular attention to that yet, so we'll do that next week. And I was just thinking there at the end of the meditation, it just occurred to me, like I've been doing these little appeals for the Dublin Buddhist Centre, and one's always tempted to try and do it in an original way so that people don't get bored if you're asking them for money. It's quite a challenge actually to do that, to think of a new way of doing it. But anyway, what I was thinking tonight is that part of what I see as the kind of mission, as it were, of the Dublin Buddhist Centre and of our particular Buddhist community is of trying to teach as many people as possible to do the Metta Bhavana, and for that to actually become part of a lot of people's lives. And in that way, the world will actually change. It'll happen quite slowly. And I just wanted to read you a little bit of, this is the last little bit of Middlemarch, the George Eliot novel. This is what she says at the end. Hopefully this comes across. She says, this is talking about the main character of the book. Her finely touched spirit had still its fine issues, though they were not widely visible. Her full nature spent itself in channels which had no great name on the earth, but the effect of her being on those around her was incalculably diffusive, for the growing good of the world is partly dependent on unhistoric acts, and that things that are not so ill with you and me as they might have been is half owing to the number who lived faithfully a hidden life and rest in unvisited tombs. So just basically saying that, that we can all have a positive impact on the world in which we live, and the Metta Bhavana will help us to do it. And that's what we're trying to do with the Dublin Buddhist Centre. So if you want to help us do that, please give us some money, and that will make a big difference to our ability to do that. So we'll leave it there for this evening.